Dubai for you is associated with?
Pushing the boundaries of vision and being comfortable outside the comfort zone.
Welcome to the Encrypted podcast, your gateway to the future of technology and innovation, right here in the heart of Dubai's dynamic tech universe. I'm your host, Maria Vovchok, and together with Dubai Blockchain Center, we are embarking on a journey that unravels the minds of tech visionaries through the digital frontiers that are shaping our world. Today, our guest is Henri Arslanian, the co-founder and managing partner of 9 Blocks Capital Management. Henri was previously a partner and global crypto leader at PwC. In that role, he advised many of the world's leading crypto exchanges, investors, financial institutions, and tech firms on their crypto initiatives, as well as numerous governments, regulators, and central banks on crypto regulatory and policy matters. With over 500,000 followers on LinkedIn, Henri is TEDx and global keynote speaker, a best-selling published author, and is regularly featured in global media, including Bloomberg, CNN, CNBC, BBC, The Wall Street Journal, The Economist, and the Financial Times, and many, many others. Henri was named by LinkedIn as one of the 222 global top voices in finance, and is also the host of the Crypto Capsule social media video series, as well as the Future of Money podcast and newsletter. When he has free time, Henri loves to play golf. Am I correct, Henri?
Yeah, I wish I could play more golf and improve my handicap, but trying my best.
What else do you believe that our audience should know about you that maybe I haven't mentioned yet?
First of all, thanks for having me and thanks for a great intro. I don't know, maybe one thing that I'm very passionate about is education. I've been a professor at university for many, many years, and I've been teaching courses on crypto and fintech since 2015. So very big believer in the importance of education in crypto. And obviously, I've written numerous books about it, including my last book, the Book of Crypto, and working on a lot of exciting projects, actually, from more educational content. For example, case studies that university or business school students can use on crypto companies, but also some surprises coming up for maybe crypto educational content for teenagers and kids.
Oh, really?
So a lot of exciting stuff. And of course, there's all my social media content that I think many of your listeners probably know, where a lot of people actually know me from.
So you should definitely tell us about the educational content for teenagers.
Well,
What is it?
I'm a big believer that we have this moral duty, people who are in the space, to actually empower the next generation about the future of money, about Web3, because while we obviously work in it, then the coming generation are the generation who will be the most impacted by not only fintech, by the way, but Web3 and crypto more broadly. And I find it unacceptable that we're letting university students graduate out of university, and frankly, earlier on in high school and primary school, and not giving them the tools that they need that will be essential in the Web3 future.
So what exactly have you prepared for students? And in this case, have you mentioned teenagers?
Yeah. Well, I can tell you on the university student side, a part of my books and my courses that I teach, I'm about to publish some literally business school case studies where students can look at some events that happen in the crypto ecosystem and analyze them. And this goes from some of the big crypto exchange failures that we had to some more practical developments we saw in the crypto space. So that's very exciting. On the teenager side, I cannot, it's still a secret. It's going to come out soon. But all I can tell you, it's going to be educational content that is fun and geared and delivered in a format that teenagers want. The rationale there is, I know there's many parents who are listening to the show and they want their kids to learn about crypto. They want to read them bedtime stories that relate to Web3. And we try to create content on that, which I can tell you is very difficult because the way you can train adults or people who are interested in the topic, like, for example, listeners to this podcast and video format, is very different by the way you can share knowledge with teenagers and kids, especially in an era where there's a lot of competition with TikTok and other online content that is very snappy. So it's a big challenge, but that's what makes it exciting.
So I'll tell you, I believe it sounds really intriguing, and a lot of teenagers and students, they would love to probably see what else is coming, which other book is coming, published, coming from Henri Arslanian, actually.
Well, I'll let you guys know when it's out. It'll be soon. It'll be this year.
So I really like how you mentioned that, and you said it like multiple times, that we are a lucky generation having an opportunity now to rebuild the future of money and the future of finance. When have you decided yourself that I want to be a part of it and I want to help to rebuild the future of finance?
Well, I think I always say to my students, it's a mindset, right? Actually, every time I teach a course at university, on my last session, I always put a chair in the middle of the class, and I tell students that you should always sit on the edge of your seat. And the day you're comfortable and you're relaxed in your seat, you think you're at the top of the world. It's the day you've actually lost.
Okay, so I need to sit like this, right?
On the edge of your seat,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
literally bring a chair and I show that to students. And I think that's a mindset that you got to have. I call this the immigrant mindset. You got to be a paranoid optimist. And
Paranoid
when I was young in my 20s, I'm Armenian by background. Grew up in Canada. I moved to China before the whole China boom took place. And the way it happened, actually, I used to work in. I was a lawyer by background. I used to work in financial markets, and I used to work in a bank.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at the time that how much work was done manually at a time. And that's how I discovered fintech. I used to take some days off, annual holidays, to go to some of the first fintech meetups at a time. The word fintech was just being created. It was not still as standard as it is now. We're recording this at the fintech hive, for example, which was not a term that existed in 2012 and 13. And obviously, that's how I discovered Bitcoin afterwards. And really, since 2000, I discovered 2013. I organized my first Bitcoin event in 2014, in January 2014. And since then, since 2016 afterwards, I've been full-time in crypto since then. So, and I believe it's actually, we are the lucky generation. Our kids and our grandchildren will look back at the period that we are living in today and say this was a pivotal moment in the history of finance, in the history of money. They're going to ask us in 20, 30 years, how was it when Bitcoin was just becoming mainstream? How the first regulators were coming up with regulations on crypto? How the first CBDCs were coming into play? Stable coins, all these topics that we're living in today. And I'm not even mentioning topics like NFTs or DeFi. This is generally a historical moment we're living in. I find myself privileged to be part of, not only see this with my own eyes, but play a role in shaping it. And I think everybody, like whoever is listening to the show, for example, I think we should never forget not only the professional duty, but the moral duty that we have in playing our part in shaping this ecosystem.
Actually, it's a good point that you also mentioned back in 2014. If I'm correct, at that time you were working as a crypto hedge fund lawyer, and you organized your first crypto meetup.
Yeah.
You were the organizer. Yeah. And some of your colleagues at the time, they were even like frowning, like this event was frowned upon, and people were not exactly like so really open to come and discuss crypto. Because can you please tell us about the story?
Yeah,
because
it's
really interesting, actually.
I even mentioned this in my last book as well, because I find it's funny how far the crypto industry has come.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned, at a time before I moved to Dubai, I used to live in Hong Kong for over 10 years. And, make a long story short, I used to chair the Financial Services Committee at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Hong Kong.
Oh,
and
really?
In January 2014, I organized the first Bitcoin event. And I remember at a time, people filed complaints at the Canadian Chamber of Commerce.
Really?
Saying that why are we hosting this money laundering event and it was used by criminals. To be fair, Maria, at a time, it was very early on. I mean, just to put things in context, literally 3 or 4 weeks later of that event, Mt. Gox collapsed, which at the time was by far, Mt. Gox was the biggest crypto exchange. It was based in Tokyo. And I remember at a time in February or March, I thought about it and I said, it's too bad because I really thought crypto had potential. And I don't know if this thing is going to make it now. And of course, the rest is history. But it was that's how it happened. And, I think it's important that we take a step back. And yes, crypto is still going through challenges as we speak. But really, there was a time, especially in the early days of 2014, 15, 16, where if you're involved in digital assets, I mean, your banks would close your accounts. By the way, it still happens today. At a time, if you're running a crypto company, it was very common that the bank would come and shut down the accounts of the company with 30 days notice but also shut down the accounts of the founders with 30-day notice.
Really?
It was very early days. I still remember when Ethereum was launched, when ICOs became a thing, when NFTs started. I mean, so there was a whole movement in the first couple of years. What's interesting for me is that many of the people that were in crypto in those early days are still people that I interact with in my professional capacity. And it's really, I would say, beautiful how far the industry has come. I remember when the Economist had blockchain on its cover. By the way, they were the one that actually coined the term blockchain before we used to refer to it as the Bitcoin. And I remember that in the same month, The Economist had it on its cover, and Bloomberg magazine had it on its cover, and we were like, wow, like this thing is actually, people are talking about it. So it's very actually interesting over it. And there's been many books written about it. Actually, there's a book called Block Kong, which
I actually have one of the copies.
Oh, you have a copy? Excellent. Yeah, it talks about like I think it was 10 or 15 people that helped shape at the time the crypto ecosystem in Asia. And many of them now are still very active in the crypto ecosystem. But I still often remember and actually have a smile when I think about those early days of crypto.
Yeah, and actually, I would like to go back to that time while you were living in Hong Kong. And actually, as I mentioned, you're a best-selling author. So the Book of Crypto is not only it's your third one.
Yeah.
Because your first book was actually named Entrepreneurship and Finance.
Correct. Yeah.
And at that time, it was about the hedge fund industry in Asia. Were you at that time already thinking that you want to create your own hedge fund? And did you think at the time that it will be specifically crypto hedge fund?
The short answer is no, for one very simple reason. Like you mentioned, I was working as a hedge fund lawyer. I worked in prime brokerage and investment banking for many years, where I used to cover the hedge fund industry. And my specialty was capital raising, helping hedge funds raise money from institutional investors, but also setting up hedge funds. So I had the privilege of working with some of the big prop desks at the time that were spinning off and launching their hedge funds. What I love about the hedge fund industry, it's very entrepreneurial. So if today you work in a big investment bank, it's not very entrepreneurial. I think there used to be back in the day, but it's not. It hasn't been the case for 10, 15 years. And the hedge fund industry, I find that in the financial world is where you see a lot of entrepreneurship. But then, it's funny how when you look back, these dots connect. When I wrote my first book, Entrepreneurship and Finance, was to help other finance entrepreneurs who wanted to launch their fund and empower them with the knowledge and the tools they need to launch the fund. My second book was The Future of Finance, where we're trying to see how the combination of fintech, crypto, and AI was going to change the future of finance. This has been very interesting because we talk about elements like ChatGPT, generative AI. Really back in the day, this was about 2018, 19. And of course,
it wasn't still a hype.
Oh yeah, it was actually, it's funny actually, that book now is back on the best-selling list because a lot of people now are looking at the combination of crypto and AI. And of course, my last book, The Book of Crypto, is really focused on crypto. At the time, of course, I didn't know I was going to launch a hedge fund. The reason how the hedge fund story for our current hedge fund, which is 9 Blocks Capital, happened was that I genuinely believe that a lot of for the crypto industry to go from 1.0 to 2.0, you need the institutional investors. And that applies from anywhere from pension and sovereign wealth funds to the broader family office, foundation, endowment ecosystem. And I think while for many of them, their first step into this space will be via equity investments, VC type investments, the next step is not necessarily, they're not going to buy Bitcoin on their balance sheet or Ethereum on their balance sheet, but they're going to invest in fund of funds or hedge funds, where they're going to pay professional managers to manage those assets. And then they will gradually learn about the asset class and then start doing it in-house. And by the way, this is what happens in traditional hedge funds, where now, for example, derivatives is very common, but in the 1990s, it was a brand new asset class. Emerging markets. Now we're sitting in Dubai and investing in Asia, investing in the Middle East is very common. But really 20 years ago, 30 years ago, this was not the case. And the way that a lot of institutional allocators learned about this, let's say derivatives or emerging markets, was by investing in fund managers who manage this asset class, and then obviously gradually brought this back in-house. And our goal with 9 Blocks was very simple, was to build really the leading institutional grade crypto hedge fund that has everything that is needed from regulations, governance, transparency, security systems, but for the digital asset space.
Dubai, home for innovations. So you actually spent like many years in Hong Kong, and right now one of your co-founders is based in Hong Kong. But why have you decided as a manager location to choose Dubai for your crypto hedge fund?
You know, I'm a big lawyer by background. I'm a big believer in regulations for the crypto industry. I've been advocating this for many, many years. I've been training many regulators over the years. I've been advocate that for the crypto industry to go from 1.0 to 2.0, we need, first of all, proper regulatory frameworks that are clear and that set a level playing field that crypto companies can operate on it. And of course, as a business for a hedge fund, we really believe in being compliant. And when we look at launching the hedge fund about 2 years ago or so, I mean, this industry moves very fast, but there was not many jurisdictions where you could set up institutional grade crypto hedge fund. And of course, throughout our journey, Dubai has tried to position itself as a global crypto hub by doing something that the crypto industry has been asking for a long time, which is providing regulations that players can abide with. You know, and this is, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions in the broader public or the broader financial world, where people think people in crypto are just cowboys, they're trying to avoid regulations, which is not the case. I would say the vast percentage of the Web3 industry and crypto industry wants to have proper frameworks that are adequate, that actually take into account the developments in the nature of digital assets and Web3 in general, to ensure that bad actors are not using it, but at the same time that actually they can enable them to grow and actually increase basically grow the ecosystem.
Let's talk more broadly about regulatory landscape, and let's talk about worldwide regulations.
Sure.
Because, for example, when we think about that, it definitely influences like the crypto market, and obviously it influences the activity of crypto hedge funds. So from your perspective that you've seen already, how does it impact your fund operations right now? And is this also one of the reasons why have you decided like to have as a manager location here in Dubai?
Yeah, so I think if I look at it holistically, I think I'm very impressed by the broader UAE, especially Dubai's leadership and vision when it comes to not only digital assets, by the way, but broader Web3. I think it's really Dubai's and the UAE is a standout right now when you look at global regulations. You know, I've had the privilege of seeing the different cycles of crypto regulations. For example, a couple of years ago, if you think about 2017, 18, was some of the smaller jurisdictions that actually set up regulatory frameworks. And then obviously 2019-20, you had some of the more established financial centers who put in place some regulatory frameworks. And then 2020, 21, 22, you've had places like Dubai and UAE who came up with very specific regulations for it. I'm actually very impressed with what has been happening in the UAE. And I think the numbers speak for itself. I mean, only seeing a number of Web3 and digital assets companies who decided to set up shop in the broader UAE speaks for itself. I think the era of lawlessness in crypto is going to come to an end. I think you're always going to have these centralized regulated players. I think you're always going to have this DeFi and decentralized world, by the way. And I think there's a space for both, and both need to cohabitate, by the way. But I genuinely believe this, and I know it's very controversial in crypto space, that for the industry to grow from 1.0 to 2.0, we need regulations in the crypto space.
I remember that you actually mentioned this, and it's a very interesting point, how DeFi can be regulated in your book of crypto. So what's your perspective about regulating DeFi right now?
First of all, I think it's very difficult. First of all, I think the crypto industry, we do a bad job in, we don't give credit to the regulators where it's due. First of all, it's very difficult to regulate DeFi. I can guarantee if you go to anybody in the crypto space, you tell them you are tomorrow responsible and accountable for coming up with a regulatory framework for DeFi. It's extremely difficult. It's very easy to criticize. Second thing also, being a regulator is very difficult because there's no upside, you only get downside, right? So I think regulators are in a tough place. In my own personal experience, I can genuinely say that the average regulator is way more knowledgeable on crypto than what the people actually believe about it. You know, they're often more knowledgeable, they're educated on the topic. Now, Is it easy to regulate DeFi? No. Should we regulate DeFi? I'm not even sure. I think there's definitely a big space for the centralized digital asset space that wants to be regulated. That's, I would argue, is probably the majority of the market. People, the retail public, institutional investors, they want to trade with crypto exchanges. They want to custody their assets at custodians that are regulated. And frankly, regulations more broadly, the principles is nothing new. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of best practices that have been in place for a long time. Even banks, for example, we like to criticize banks in the crypto space, but because of the challenges banks have been through over the last couple, 2-3 decades, there are actually a lot of best practices, not only regulatory, by the way, but a lot of internal governance controls, even internal controls like in third-party attestations, SOC 1, SOC 2, and other ISO certifications and others that are in place that I believe the crypto industry will benefit a lot. Now, should we right now start to try to regulate DeFi? I'm not sure. I think it's very early stages. And I think that there's a role to play to let DeFi blossom, to see how it evolves. I'm very excited about DeFi. I think from an intellectual perspective and financial perspective, DeFi is really pushing the boundaries and allowing us to actually come back to the first principles approach to how we can deliver financial services and how we can build financial products. For example, the fact that it's permissionless, what I call financial Legos. That I can take any 2 DeFi applications that I like, mix and match them in a way, and come up with a new offering. I think that's really beautiful. And I think that really allows us to really go back to the principles of why we even have financial services. And that's something that I think that centralized finance in many regards has failed. And where with DeFi, we have the chance to actually address it when it comes to financial inclusion, for example, financial empowerment, financial education. I think these are areas that I'm very, very optimistic about the future of DeFi.
Actually, I would like right now, Henri, go back to your book of crypto. Because I really liked how you provide a really precise analysis of active and passive crypto hedge funds. While analyzing different parts of the world, what can you say about right now crypto funds, setting a crypto fund or a crypto hedge fund in the MENA region?
So I think it's interesting. And people use the terms crypto funds or crypto hedge funds. They
because it might be still, they're like crypto venture VC funds right now. So it's like very important because you differentiated it pretty well. I wanted you right now to share it with our audience because I'm sure they would love to. Somebody who haven't read the book of crypto by Henri Arslanian, you should definitely find it. It's really easy to find on Amazon and other as well sources.
Of course. No, I think it's very important. Maybe it's the professor in me, but often I think to be able to explain something, I think you need to really simplify it and really categorize it in ways that are possible. When it comes to crypto hedge funds or funds, actually the classification has been done for many, many years. For example, people throw around the words crypto funds or crypto hedge funds or crypto VC funds. But I think we need to separate between VC funds, where there are venture capital funds that are investing either in equity of new startups or more established companies, depending of which life cycle they're looking at, or tokens, for example. But a lot of these VC funds are what we call of a fixed duration. A lot of VC funds, for example, or private equity funds and the likes, they raise money. The fund has a shelf life of 7 or 10 years, and often with an extension of 1 or 2 years. But they make the investments, they make a return, and then the idea is that investors have made money during that period. But then we have actually active management, what we call open-ended funds, which are funds where investors can invest and redeem at basically on a monthly, quarterly, or annually basis, which is not the case with VC funds or private equity funds, where once you're invested, the money is locked in for a couple of years. When it comes to open-ended funds, which are these funds that you can invest and redeem on a, let's say, predetermined basis, there's a whole range of them. There's, for example, passive funds. A good example are some of the ETFs that people are looking at, ETF equivalent funds that people are looking at.
One of the hot topics recently.
Of course. Then you have active management funds, where actually you have fund managers who are trying to actually pick the winners of the different digital assets in there. In the same way that there's active management equity hedge funds, people choose stocks. Then you have absolute return funds, where people do go long on certain positions, they go short on certain positions, and then in that category, there's tons of different subcategories. For example, at 9 Blocks, our strategy is a market neutral fund where we actually do arbitrage between different tokens. So whether crypto markets go up or crypto markets go down, we don't care. As long as it's liquidity, people are trading, we just arbitrage some of these inefficiencies in crypto markets. For example, between perpetual swaps, which are crypto derivatives, and let's say Bitcoin or Ethereum and the spot prices. So I think that there's different categories in them that are quite important because not only the risk return profile is different, but also the liquidity is very different in these instruments.
So one of the major reasons why, for example, someone would rather prefer buy into a passive crypto product that is actively managed because the risk is the lesser risk. What else?
It's a big topic in the asset management sector. If you think about, for example, only the hedge fund industry is $3 trillion right now.
Yeah.
The broader investment world is multiple times that, for example. This is a big philosophical debate where, forget even crypto, if you look at traditional stocks, for example, many would believe that you're better off buying an ETF of a certain index.
Because you're not directly exposed to the product.
There's no manager making selections. It buys automatically the index or whatever the underlying instruments it is tracking. Whereas with active management, you have actually fund managers that are making certain investment decisions with the idea that they can beat this index. I would argue that when it comes to digital assets, when it comes to stocks, for example, right? It's obviously there's a lot of price discovery, there's a lot of transparency, there's a lot of reporting. When it comes to actually digital assets, we are not even close to the level of price discovery and that exists in traditional markets. If you look only at the top 50 tokens, for example, even people in crypto, you ask them what's happening in the top 50 coins, very few will be aware unless you're following the ecosystems of each one of these different layer ones or coins or projects. It's very difficult to be on top of it. And there's also very little research on them. So there's a lot, I think, more opportunities for generating alpha, generating returns when it comes, when you're looking at some of these actively managed crypto strategies in digital assets.
By the way, I really liked, as far as you used to work at PwC, recently also PwC, together with Alwood and AMA, published their 4th annual Global Crypto Hedge Fund report, which is packed with several interesting takeaways. So you actually even shared about this in one of your newsletters. Can you please share with our audience about the key takeaways that you definitely believe that people have to have a look at?
Yeah, no, obviously being in the hedge fund industry, I think reports are very useful. And for full disclosure, I used to be a partner at PwC, and I was the one launched this report a couple of years ago.
So how is it later on to read the same report that you used to write?
Yeah, now I'm a participant. Actually, we submit our data to be, and our data is in it. I mean, I think it's very important to have data and units of comparison. Actually, when it comes to crypto hedge funds, I think this report is interesting because not only it has data on the crypto hedge fund ecosystem, but also has a lot of data, which I found this year is very fascinating, on how traditional hedge funds are entering the crypto space.
By the way.
So that I find is fascinating. Just to give you an example, Maria, is if you look at the data of the last report that was published this year, I mean, they surveyed around 60 traditional hedge funds that have over $250 billion in assets. And what was interesting is actually, while the percentage of hedge funds that have invested in crypto went down from 37% to 29%, for those who have invested in crypto, their investments went from 4 to 7% of their fund. So if you think about it again, that means that there's about 1/3 of the global hedge funds that have some investments in crypto, which I think is already very interesting. And this is, I think, because the nature of a lot of the hedge funds, even traditional hedge funds are not crypto, they tend to be quite entrepreneurial, looking for alpha and money making in different assets. But there's been a lot of interesting data. The one that stuck out to me, and I shared this in one of my recent podcasts, The Future of Money, in my newsletter, The Future of Money, as you mentioned, was that, for example, the interesting thing is a surprisingly high number of managers are actually looking at tokenization, for example. Tokenization had its heydays in 2018, 19.
Yes.
Even myself, I really thought that tokenization was going to happen faster than it did. But it really shows you how a lot of traditional hedge funds are very bullish about tokenization. And I think anybody who has invested in a fund, in a hedge fund, knows how cumbersome and not user-friendly the process is. So I'm not surprised. But it's been also, I think there's some interesting data as well that is, I wouldn't say concerning, but actually brings you back to reality. For example, in the report last year, the majority of traditional hedge funds mentioned that it was the lack of regulatory clarity that was their biggest obstacle for them to invest in crypto. Whereas this past year, the biggest hurdle they have is reputational risk. After the events of, you name it, from FTX
2022.
To Celsius to Genesis, all the ones that took place, there is a reputational risk for a lot of these traditional hedge funds to enter the crypto space. And you cannot blame them. You know, if you're managing a 10, 15, $20 billion hedge fund, you're making good money. You have very traditional and sticky investors from sovereign wealth funds, pension funds, you know, and the likes. Why would you risk it by investing in crypto and risk, causing issues with your existing base? So I think there was a lot of data like that that I find very interesting. Again, this PwC CoinShares and AMA report, I find it very interesting, and I highly recommend for people to go read it if you're interested in data about the crypto hedge fund space and data about the traditional hedge fund space entering the crypto space.
Encrypted is your exclusive ticket to the epicenter of technological innovations in the MENA region. By the way, as you mentioned, because after everything that happened, less traditional hedge funds entering crypto, but your fund is a crypto hedge fund. So taking into account what is happening right now, how do you manage risk in this highly volatile, as always, and unpredictable crypto market?
Yeah, and it's obviously, when it comes to our hedge fund, obviously we're very institutionally driven, right? So everybody in the team has many years of traditional hedge fund experience, proper, with proper risk management and controls. Now, of course, everybody has also crypto expertise. So there's two very main risks when you're managing a crypto hedge fund that you need to look at. One of them is market risk, So what happens with crypto markets and how you manage the risk. And for that, there's a whole suite of, ways to do that. And that's actually proper traditional risk management, There's obviously a lot of, from Greeks that we use to actually risk committees, to actually, concentration risk, asset risk and stuff like that is actually looked at very seriously. I would argue that, when you're managing a fund, the first rule is you not lose money. So risk management obviously always comes first. And I think any hedge fund manager that is not putting risk management first is actually not only breaching, it's not best practice, but it probably has a breach of its fiduciary duty. So obviously you have market risk. Second is, I would say you have, we call it enterprise risk, but let's say counterparty risk. For example, if you're running a market neutral hedge fund, you're trading on various crypto exchanges at the same time. So one of the risks is counterparty risk. How do you ensure that that exchange is going to be there a week, a month, a year from now? And to do that, obviously, we have a whole range of ways we do due diligence on exchanges before we onboard them. There's ongoing due diligence on various counterparties. There's various transparency we ask from them. And there's general due diligence. For example, are these counterparties regulated? What kind of transparency are they giving? What kind of access they're providing to you? So there's a lot of different measures that we look at, both at the market side, but also the enterprise side as well, which I think is very, very important for anybody looking at it. This comes in the broader spectrum of what we call operational due diligence. When any institutional investor is investing in a crypto hedge fund, they care about returns, of course, but there's a big emphasis on ensuring that the business is properly set up, what we call ODD, operational due diligence, which makes sure that the fund has proper custodians, has proper exchanges, is doing proper due diligence, has proper policies, controls, anything from personal account trading to making sure there's independent board and governance, to making sure there's the right policies in place for cash transfer, asset transfer. So all these things are very, very important from that perspective.
So let's talk more about security and custody of digital assets. How do you manage? How do you handle this security and custody of digital assets in your fund?
Well, I mean, this is frankly, if you're not obsessed about custody and security, you shouldn't be in the crypto hedge fund business. I would argue you shouldn't be even in any crypto business that has external clients. Of course, security is a topic we take very, very seriously. There's a whole range of best practices that are in place that actually every fund and frankly every crypto company should have in place. And the same thing applies for custody as well. And that involves a broad range of measures of how your whitelisting addresses, how cash and asset transfers are taking place. I'm surprised today to see that there's some crypto firms where, for example, one person can move assets, which should never be the case. You need a couple of different people. One that makes a transaction, the other one has the approvals that are in different jurisdictions that have different accesses. Because the reality is, any crypto company, you are a natural target for bad actors, and you need to put in place some of these measures in place on that side. Custody is a topic that I'm very personally very obsessed about. I've had the privilege again to seeing the crypto industry evolve greatly over the last, I would say, 3-4 years. I have to say, I'm pleasantly surprised and impressed actually by the work that crypto custodians have done, not only in kind of security they have in place, the kind of independent controls and reviews they've gotten from SOC reviews to various ISO reviews and security reviews, to also the structures that have been put in place for counterparty risk mitigation that ensures that actually when you're trading with a certain crypto exchange, you can be sure that there's your risk of counterparty risk is lowered. Of course, there's nothing that is risk-free. There's always a risk when you're trading, not only crypto, but any kind of investment, any kind of instrument. But I think it's very important that the industry not only puts in place its best practices, but also we continuously innovate and evolve, because I think for the industry to continue to grow its growth, this is essential, and custodians and security have a big role to play.
Thank you. So Henri, by the way, when you mentioned about investments, can you describe some successful story that about investment that your fund has had in the crypto market?
We don't talk a lot about our successful investments for various regulatory reasons, but I think what's important is that I think we've been fortunate enough in our hedge fund. Now we have 2-year track record. Of course, we're obviously one of the largest market neutral crypto hedge funds now globally, but also I think we set up a proper business, and that has not only on the investment side, but also on the non-investment side, in trying to be best in class. And that involves being transparent and being professional and trying to establish this industry best practice in the fund. I would say where you learn more is actually in the failures of the industry. And I don't know if we had the good luck or the bad luck to be here, throughout some of the challenges the industry saw in 2022 and 2023. From, if you think about the Luna Terra collapse, to some of the big counterparty collapses, think about the Celsius, Genesis, to FTX. And as the industry went through these different failures, first of all, they're very stressful moments, from the bank accounts being closed after the whole closure of bank accounts in the US, through this whole, counterparties that were going under, to all the rumor cycle around them. And I think the one thing that's interesting there is actually, as a team, you always learn. I think it's during these bad times that you grow as a team. And I feel fortunate enough, or unfortunate enough, I don't know how to see it, but that with our team, we went through all these different challenges together. And actually, with these challenges, you learn, you improve, and you put in place, and you grow out of it. And also, I think it's very important to be transparent. I think that anybody who invests in crypto right now knows these challenges. Yeah. For example, like many players in the crypto industry, some of the banks that we were using got shut down in March of 2023. The banks in the US. So there's a whole process of how you deal with these issues. What I hope is, I think unfortunately the reality in crypto is there will always be challenges.
Yes.
There'll be other crises in a couple of years. It won't be the ones we've had. It'll be something new. And I think the industry hopefully will learn and will improve as we go through these things. I think that
Are you prepared for them? Like for these new challenges, can you foresee some new challenges coming?
I think you can never foresee everything that will happen, of course, but I think you try to you try to lead by example, be transparent, and also be very humble by it as well. We always try. For example, in our fund, we just recently got a independent third-party review of the securities and our controls of our fund, for example. I think you always need to be. The industry is such in a flux mode that I don't think that anybody is in a crypto hedge fund or a crypto asset management sector or any crypto industry. There'll be an era that, you can say, we're set up now, everything is good, let's go relax.
We're safe.
Unfortunately or fortunately, this industry is going to continue to evolve. And, it's also, I think, a personality matter. I speak to many people who are in traditional finance who want to get into crypto. But I always tell them, if on Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock, you want to go enjoy the weekend, spend time with your family, your kids, your friends, do not get into crypto. I mean, crypto is 24/7. And if only the incidents we had in the past year, many of them happened over weekends, you know?
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate in an industry where you need to be ready
To work all
actually,
the time.
I don't know, to work on top, hopefully not. I mean, but you know, you need to have proper processes in place to kind of try to have some kind of balance. But the reality is this industry is 24/7. And I think there will be other challenges. It's like the nature of any industry that is in a growth phase. These challenges will come. I would say it attracts certain kind of people. It attracts people that are comfortable with constant change. It attracts people that want these challenges, that are intellectually want this stimulation. And that's what I love this industry. I find that anybody, if you deal with from investors to people who work in it, really are open-minded and they have this intellectual curiosity and they're happy and they're comfortable in this zones that are outside the comfort zone. And that's what I find this industry, it makes this ecosystem beautiful.
Any specific regions or countries where you can see like significant potential for crypto adoption that everybody's talking about? Where do you believe it may happen, like in the nearest future?
You know, I think we need to separate when it comes to crypto adoption. I really separate them in two big categories, right? So I think you have what I call the regulated or centralized world, right? So I think in areas like these, places like UAE, for example, is a great example where I think the regulatory frameworks that are being put in place, the government policies that are being put in place. I mean, the fact that there's podcasts today is a very good example, right? Are attracting a lot of the players. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, the crypto industry wants regulations. They want rules that are transparent, clear, they can abide with, and on which they can build their businesses. I think what I'm seeing right now is places like the UAE. I think we'll see tremendous growth. Places like parts of Asia, like Hong Kong and Singapore, I think we'll see tremendous growth in the space. And I hope also we'll see a change in the tone and mindset in the US as well, that will at least not only slow down the exodus of companies leaving the US, but at least help build a local ecosystem. Where I expect to see a lot of crypto adoption is actually not in these developed countries. You know, if you come to a place like UAE, there's a great central bank. People trust the central bank. They trust their policymakers. You know, or places like Hong Kong, Singapore, the US, people trust their governments. Generally speaking, I know a lot of people would not agree with me. Where I expect to see a lot of adoption is where there's no established infrastructure. Parts of Africa. We saw that in fintech, for example, how tools like M-Pesa, for example, had tremendous growth. Places like India, right now, when I look at how the UPI systems, have Aadhaar, have really transformed the financial ecosystem on that side. We saw it in China before. So when it comes to crypto, I expect to see a lot of adoption and usage, and actually use case testing in emerging markets. You know, and that includes parts of Asia, parts of the Middle East as well, but parts of Africa as well. But also, I think where we're going to see a lot of usage is experimentation. Fortunately, in places where people don't trust central banks, for example. A great example of this is places like Lebanon. You know, places like Argentina. You know, if you go to a lot of these countries, Turkey, you know, where people do not trust their central banks, and they're very keen to use alternatives. It's not a surprise that in many of these countries, usage of stable coins is extremely high, and adoption and awareness of crypto is very high as well. So I expect to see a lot of innovation in that space. And also, I think when in regards to DeFi as well, I think one thing that we need to, I'm a big advocate of KYC, AML, but I think it's very interesting that today, there's parts of the world who are completely unbanked. And I don't think, first of all, there's financial inclusion issues, Today, the bank decides if they want to do business for you because the cost of onboarding a client and maintaining it is very high. And unless you have, X in assets, they don't want to handle you. But also, I think people in certain countries. Personally, I find it very, one of the saddest things today I find in the world is that where you're born, one of the few things that you have absolutely no control in your life, has such a big impact on the type of financial interaction you can have. God forbid you're born in Iran, you're born in Syria, you're born in Yemen, and the list goes on in these countries. Somebody who's born today, young 18-year-old in these countries, didn't necessarily choose its government. But just because the person is born in that country or lives in that country, that person is excluded not only of traditional financial systems, but also of a lot of centralized crypto ecosystems. And this is, I think, an area where I hope DeFi, when it comes to financial inclusion and empowering people when it comes to financial education, financial management will play a role. There's a very fine balance. Obviously, we don't want bad actors. We don't want certain governments, to come and get involved or play a role in digital assets. I think there's a very finite balance that we need to find between ensuring the bad actors stay away and actually we empower financial inclusion. Let's not forget that, again, criminals are using dollars, they're using traditional currencies, they're using existing banking system, they're using money laundering. Money laundering is a very serious problem. According to the UN, between 2 to 7% of global GDP is laundered every year. That's anywhere from $800 billion to $2 trillion in assets. When it comes to crypto, depending on the data set you look at, it's around 0.3% of crypto transactions are linked to illicit activities. That's less than $30 billion as a whole. I mean, it's nothing. So I think we need to be very clear about that, the role that the fine balance between letting financial innovation in areas like DeFi and ensuring the bad actors are being kept away.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Henri. Today we had Henri Arslanian, the co-founder and managing partner at 9 Blocks Capital. And moreover, we'll go in right now to our rapid fire questions. Rapid fire questions. So right now, Henri, we will do quick rapid fire questions, as they call them, quick or rapid.
I'm excited. Here we go.
And in this case, our audience will get to know you better as entrepreneur and as a person. So let's start.
Let's do it.
So your biggest passion in life?
Biggest passion in life, empowering people. That's why I've been teaching for many years. I write books, I share content. I really believe there's a pleasure in giving information to somebody and seeing the impact it can have.
Amazing. Your biggest failure and biggest lesson to learn?
Oh, I've had many failures over the years. I would say, learning from failures. I would say losing is actually something I learn a lot. So every time I lose something, and this happens, I used to be an athlete before. I used to train a lot, competition and stuff. So I think losing, there's always when you lose, don't lose the lesson.
Name 5 qualities that you believe a real entrepreneur should have.
Being obsessed, being hardworking, being really paranoid, and being, I think, a good leader and leading by example. I think unless you're crazy, you want to work 24/7 and you're happy to lead by example, you should not be an entrepreneur.
What would you never do while building a company?
Not lead by example. I think, and I've done this many times in all my roles, if you're not leading by example, there's no way you're going to be able to lead a team or grow a business.
Biggest misconception about Web3?
Oh, there's tons. I would say biggest misconception is that it's being used by criminals, money launderers, and stuff like that, whereas actually the vast majority of the Web3 and crypto ecosystem, it's people building the future of finance and trying to empower more people globally on this topic.
Finish the sentence. My business philosophy is?
No pain, no gain. Hard work pays off.
Oh, interesting. By the way, you're a keynote speaker. How many times do you practice your keynote before going on a stage?
Every time. So before I give a keynote, I will at least practice it once or twice that morning. People often see me on stage, but I spend not only rehearsing my presentation and tailoring it, I do a lot of voice exercises. I mean, there's a whole routine. I have a video on it actually on YouTube on how I prepare for my speeches. But people see the finished product, they have no idea what happens behind the scenes.
Describe a perfect day for you.
A perfect day. I wake up normally at 5 a.m. I'm at the gym. I like to be at the office early. It's a day where I can get a lot of work done. I can work out. I have a chance to meditate. I have a chance to physically work out. But that I'm happy to get a lot of things done. I have always a checklist when I start my day, and I try to get as many of these items through it. So I love working. I'm a bit of a workaholic, so I actually quite enjoy working.
Your biggest aim to achieve?
Biggest aim to achieve is making an impact. That means either it's financially, whether it's in what we give back to society, whether what we give back. So I think I'm a big. I would love to have leave this world one day and say that I've had an impact in my specific vertical or whatever I do.
The motto you live by?
It's literally no pain, no gain. I've had this since I'm a kid. I genuinely believe in hard work. I don't believe in this work-life balances. I don't believe in this work from homes. I really believe that if you tell anybody that they should focus on work-life balance under the age of 40 or 50, you're giving them this favor.
If there were a movie about your life, what would you call it?
Oof, it's tough. I would call it, I don't know what people call it, but let's say, I I'd say the philosophies I live with, which is like hustling, hard work, focus, and trying to have an impact.
What are you working on right now when you have free time?
I don't have much free time, but let's say what I work outside of my job is I try to publish a lot of content, like social media content, so educational material. So what I'm doing right now, my weekends, is literally writing case studies for students.
The next big tech trend to follow.
Oh, I think there's so many, but I think it's the conversion of how AI and broader Web3 and crypto are coming together. I think we'll have a 1+1 = 3 relationship impact.
I'll ask you this question because this is the one that you're asking while having your crypto capsules and the Future of Money podcast.
Okay.
But also, I was wondering, what would you answer? Because if you could invite any person dead or alive for a dinner, who would it be?
It's funny, I've been asking this question on my show for all these years. Nobody has ever asked me that. I'm a big believer in nation building. I read a lot about history, and I would love to sit down with some of the people who have built countries and nations. In Asia, it would be like Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. In Dubai, I would love to have one day the chance to meet with Sheikh Maktoum. I've read all his books. I'm amazed of how they were able to really build a country in the middle of the desert with what it is today. So I would love to meet with Sheikh Maktoum and anybody actually in the UAE leadership. I really believe in that. I know it sounds very biased because I'm here, but I would love to have the honor one day of meeting him.
Your personal formula of success?
Hard work, hard work, hard work. I really believe the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I believe that good things happen when you work. You spend the time and you go that extra 10% will give you a 30% returns that really set you apart.
And the last question, Dubai for you is associated with?
Pushing the boundaries, a vision, and being comfortable outside the comfort zone.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. Today, our guest was Henri Arslanian, the co-founder and managing partner at 9 Blocks Capital Management. Thank you so much for this fireside chat.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Henri. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching and see you next time. From the gleaming skyscrapers of Dubai to the innovation hubs of the Middle East and beyond, Encrypted brings you thought-provoking discussions, exclusive insights, and stories of innovation that will leave you inspired.